Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Erie, and the dog has toys in the background, so have fun with the background noises today. So today is one of the many year-end wrap-up videos you're going to see this month, and this one is my 5-star predictions for 2021. So last year I put 7 books on a list of 5-star predictions because I'm really bad at predicting 5-star books. Basically, what I did is I picked books for various reasons that were super arbitrary, saying that, hey, I think I'm gonna give this 5 stars. This feels like a 5-star book. I don't really pick anything in the middle of series. I don't pick anything by authors I know I give everything 5 stars to. These are kind of just, some of them it's I've never read anything by the author, some of them it's I've read a bunch of stuff by the author and never really gave anything 5 stars, but they're all just kind of maybe for no reason whatsoever, this might be 5 stars. So I'm gonna go through this list and tell you what I think of the books that I read. I did read all 7 of them over this past year. So a couple of things. I'm going to go from lowest rated to highest rated, but only by the numbers. So it'll be 1 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. But if I give a bunch of them 3 stars, they're not going to be in any particular order within that 3-star category. I'm also going to not try to talk too long about these books, and everything that I talk about will be linked below in the comments, my link to my Goodreads review of these books, so you can get more detailed information if you care to. So out of the 7 books that I predicted I was going to give 5 stars, I actually give one of them 1 star. So that was a very, very off prediction, and that was Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Now this was the only classic on this list, and I thought I was going to give this 5 stars because I had been told by a couple of different people over the years that they think I should read Thomas Hardy because he always writes really depressing characters and they always have bad endings. And I was like, perfect, that's my favorite kind of book. I want to read them. And I've read 2 books by Thomas Hardy now, both of them this year, but Tess of the D'Urbervilles is the one I predicted would be a 5-star because it had a female protagonist, and supposedly an unlikable female protagonist. Oh boy, was I wrong. This was super rapey, and all of the men were scumbags, and she was basically all I'm not pure, so no man could ever love me, and I hated it. It's supposed to be satire. It didn't really read like satire, it read like misogyny. So yeah, I hated that. Probably not gonna read anything else by Thomas Hardy. I didn't give anything 2 stars, but I did give one book 3 stars, which was Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. Now, this one was one of the 2 fantasy romances on here, and it's supposedly fairy smut. The main character in this book, what happens? The main character in this book is the last of her kind, which is a type of fae called a nightmare, which she can show anybody their worst fears, right? And 3 years prior to the start of this book, her brother went missing, and she gets an opportunity to find her brother provided she marries this fairy guy. And that's kind of where the book goes from, and there's trials and stuff in there. This book was fine, but it just felt like maybe the first part of some longer story. This didn't feel like a complete book to me. There was too many questions left unanswered, and I didn't get any anything really juicy. There's no real sex scenes. I couldn't get any feeling for why she was attracted to the guy she ended up marrying. They didn't have like any intimate things, but she always talked about how she was like physically attracted to him all the time, and there was just her being horny all the time did not fit in well with her like actual behavior towards anybody. Like there was no real reason for her to be attracted to him other than the fact that this was a fantasy romance. So I think the story has potential, and I think that maybe later on in the series I will give a book 5 stars, but the first book just didn't feel complete enough for me, and there wasn't any of the smut, the fairy porn, if you will, that I go into expecting for fantasy romance. Alright, so most of the books on this list I actually ended up giving 4 stars, which, considering I don't give out really that many 5 stars every year, 4 stars is pretty good. So this is, the 4 stars are going to be in no particular order. I'm just going to go down the list of as I wrote them down that I predicted them. And we're going to start with Clara in the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is the 3rd book that I had read by Kazuo Ishiguro, and he's one of my favorite authors. I love the way he writes, but I had never given anything by him 5 stars, so I figured, okay, I've read some sci-fi, some like light sci-fi and like contemporary, or I guess it was historical fiction by him, and I really, really liked it. So maybe like some hard sci-fi about an android is something that will really just grab me in. And I did like Clara in the Sun. I gave it 4 stars, but it wasn't quite up to that 5-star quality. But Kazuo Ishiguro is such a calm, sweet writer, and his stories are beautiful, and he can make the most boring, mundane things interesting. So I highly recommend him, especially if you just want something nice, like not overly dramatic, not gonna make you cry, though some of his stuff can make you cry, but if you just want something like nice and calm and refreshing, I recommend any of his books. Never Let Me Go is probably the most popular, but so far all of them that I have read have been 4 stars or higher. Clara in the Sun is basically about an android. She's a something friend. What is this called? It's been quite a few months since I've read this, but she is a robot who is designed to be a friend to a child. And you have the first part of the story where she is in the shop waiting to be purchased, and then the second part of the story where she actually gets purchased and spends time with the child who or whose family purchased her. And you know in the background that a lot of very intense things are going on, but you don't really get a lot of answers to them because Clara is she's a robot. She's not really built to understand the things that are happening, the intense, sad family relationships and illnesses and just things like that. So it's a very interesting perspective, and it doesn't come with a lot of answers, but it's still like meaningful and peaceful. So I liked it, but wasn't quite up there for 5 stars. Next up was The Vanishing Half by Bennett, and this one ended up on the list, I think, because it was just so popular. Like, everybody was talking about it, and this is just general fiction about 2 twin girls who are black, and they live in a community of black people who are very, very light-skinned, and they run away from home in like their late teens, and one of the and then they end up splitting up, and one of the twins goes on to live her life as a white woman, and the other one goes on the other one goes on to live her life as a black woman, and it kind of follows them throughout their lives and then their daughters' lives, and how two of the same people can live such different, or two people who are supposed to be the same because they're twins, they're identical twins, can live such different lives based on how society perceives them. I really did like this book. I think it's great. It just didn't hit that like emotional barrier for me to hit like a full 5 stars, but it's a really, really good book. And if it sounds interesting to you, I do highly recommend it because it was definitely worth the read. Next up is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa, and this was the other fantasy romance that I read, and this one is about a girl, and I can't remember what she might be a siren, I don't remember, but she makes deals with a guy called the Bargainer, and basically she makes bargains, or anybody can make a bargain with a bargainer, and he will do something for you in exchange for a unnamed favor at a later date, and usually they're bad. Like, you have the bargainer kill somebody and then you have to kill somebody for him later down the road. Something like extreme like that. But she asks for little favors because she grew up very abused, and he's kind of like a friend and a protector to her. And so she's got these beads from the bargainer just wrapped all the way up her arm. I think she's got like 300 or something of them, which is just absurd and crazy. And the bargainer has disappeared for like 6 years or something like that at the beginning of this book, and she's kind of moved on with her life, and then all of a sudden he shows back up, and then you get the story from there. This is another one of those books that it felt incomplete, and I think I will like it more as I go on in the series, and I definitely feel like continuing reading it, but it was a little bit more spicy than Fortuna Sworn, so it got like a higher rating. And it also gave me a little bit more answers than Fortuna Sworn. So, but it wasn't complete enough to be that full 5 stars. There's still unanswered questions. There's still more that I wanted from it, so it didn't hit that full 5-star status. But I will definitely be continuing with this series hopefully soon. I don't know. After Rhapsodic, the next book was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and this one was just one of those like off the wall, like I could have hated this or I could really love this book. This is one of those books that people like really like, this is the best book I've ever read, or I hate this book. And after reading it, I understand why. It's got a hugely open-ended ending. Nothing really happens the entire book. It's just weird, and the main character is kind of a bitch for no reason. But I loved it. It was so like my kind of unlikable female character book, and I don't think it was ever meant to give me answers. Like, this wasn't the kind of book that I expected answers from, so it didn't bother me that I didn't get like a really well-rounded conclusion. Claire and the Sun was very much like that as well, where neither one of those books like I really got an answer, but it didn't bother me that I didn't get an answer at the end of the books. So this one, like I said, it's about a girl who goes to a school, like she gets recruited into this college, and people go to this college and then become like by invite only. You can't really apply to it. This is where all like the really, really rich and famous people of society end up going to school. And something weird is happening at this school. And you don't, and it's a certain, what is the word I'm looking for? A certain area of study where the weirdness comes from, and then in like this other area of study, or like the rest of the school is just like normal students. And the girl that we're following the perspective from is not in this weird area of study where all of the strange and mysterious things are coming from. So you don't really get any answers to like the weirdness because she's not part of that group. She's looking at this from the outside in. And it's kind of creepy, it's kind of weird, but also like nothing happens and you don't get any answers because you're just not following a character. You're not following the perspective of a character who can give you answers, the answers that you want. So if that sounds like something that is interesting to you, then you might like it. But if you hate open endings or unanswered questions, I can tell you right off the bat that you are not gonna like this book at all. All right, and that is 6 books, which means I only gave one book 5 stars, which is kind of sad, but you know what? I suck at predicting 5 stars, so even just giving one 5 stars is a pretty high accomplishment. And that book was The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. So this is the 4th book that I read by Kazuo Ishiguro, and this one is fantasy. And it's the same story where it's slow and atmospheric and just a lovely little sweet bundled story. But this follows a couple of different people after the death of King Arthur. And it's just, in this world, everybody forgets. Like, no one really has any long-term memory, and you're trying to discover like why and what's going on with this, because people are forgetting things that they shouldn't forget, like their children or their spouses or their community. And like, you know, as an old person, you've lived a full life, but you don't really have any real recollection of that life. And it was a very cool story, very sweet and calm again. I think this one ended up getting 5 stars because I did get answers in the end, and it was fantasy, which is my favorite genre. So finally reading a fantasy from an author that I like in other genres kind of hit that over the mark. It was kind of a low 5 star. It's probably not going to make my like top 10 5 stars of the year, but it was still a 5-star book. So that is the wrap up on my 5-star predictions. Come back tomorrow where I'm going to be talking about next year's prediction, and they're just going to be as weird and wild as today's were. Anyway, see you next time. Bye.